For thousands of years, one question has followed the pyramids. How did human beings build something so enormous, so precisely, so long ago? But perhaps that is not the most important question. Because the pyramids were not where the story began. Before the Great Pyramid, there was no Great Pyramid. Before the powerful kings, there was no unified Egyptian kingdom. Before the monumental tombs, there were small communities living beside a river. The Nile, a river cutting through one of the world's greatest deserts. Every year, its waters made agriculture possible. Every season, people returned to its banks. And slowly, something extraordinary happened. Villages became settlements. Settlements became centers of power. Centers of power became a kingdom. And that kingdom eventually became capable of building monuments that would survive thousands of years. But how? How did a civilization rise from a narrow strip of fertile land and become one of the most enduring civilizations the ancient world ever knew? The answer is not hidden inside one pyramid. It is hidden in the story of the river, the people, and the kingdom that grew beside it. This is the rise of ancient Egypt. Imagine Egypt before the pyramids. No crowds at Giza. No enormous stone monuments stretching across the horizon. No famous royal tombs. Instead, imagine a small settlement beside the Nile. Farmers working the soil. People fishing in the river. Children growing up beside fields of crops. Craftsmen shaping stone and pottery. Boats carrying goods along the water. This was the foundation of Egypt. The geography was extraordinary. Most of the surrounding landscape was desert. But beside the Nile, there was fertile land. And that narrow fertile zone became the heart of Egyptian civilization. The river provided water. The surrounding fields supported agriculture. The waterways provided transportation. And the river connected communities separated by enormous distances. For early settlers, this connection was invaluable. Goods could move. People could travel. Ideas could spread. And communities could interact with one another. But agriculture created something even more important: a food surplus. When enough food can be produced to support a population, not everyone needs to spend every hour producing food. Some people can become specialists: builders, craftsmen, traders, administrators, and leaders. That is how a simple settlement can begin developing into a complex society. Egypt was changing, but it was still divided. Ancient Egypt was traditionally described as two lands: Upper Egypt in the south, and Lower Egypt in the north. Lower Egypt included the vast Nile Delta. Upper Egypt stretched along the river farther south. These regions were connected by the Nile, but political power was not always united. Different communities developed their own centers of authority. Some became wealthier. Some became more powerful. And as populations grew, competition increased. Over time, political authority became increasingly concentrated. The scattered communities of earlier Egypt were moving toward centralized rule. But exactly how this happened remains partly hidden from us. Archaeology provides evidence, but evidence is not the same thing as a complete historical record. We do not know every conflict, every agreement, every alliance, or every decision made by the rulers of this early period. Yet by the beginning of dynastic Egypt, a major transformation had taken place. Egypt had become a unified political state, and one ruler became strongly associated with that transformation: Narmer. Among the most famous objects from early dynastic Egypt is the Narmer palette. Its imagery presents a powerful ruler in scenes associated with royal authority and domination. For historians, it is an extraordinary piece of evidence. It offers a glimpse into the political world of an Egypt that was becoming unified. Later Egyptian tradition also preserved the name Menes. For generations, scholars have debated the relationship between Menes and Narmer. Were they the same ruler? Were they different rulers? The evidence does not give us a simple answer. And that uncertainty is important. History is not about filling every gap with a confident story. Sometimes, the honest answer is, we do not know. But we do know that by the beginning of dynastic Egypt, Upper and Lower Egypt had been brought under centralized royal authority. A kingdom had emerged. And with political unity came something that would transform Egypt: organization. For the first time on such a scale, the resources of a large territory could be coordinated by a central state. And Egypt was about to discover what that power could accomplish. A king cannot build a kingdom alone. Behind the royal court was a vast network of people: farmers, craftsmen, officials, scribes, boatmen, builders, administrators. Each had a role. Agriculture produced food. Craftsmanship produced tools and goods. Trade brought valuable materials into the kingdom. And administration connected everything together. Writing became increasingly important. Information could be recorded. Goods could be counted. Names could be preserved. Resources could be managed. The Nile made this system even more effective. A boat could carry materials farther and more efficiently than people moving everything over land. Stone from distant areas could be transported toward construction sites. Agricultural products could move between regions. People could travel along the river. The Nile was therefore more than a source of life. It was a natural highway, and the Egyptian state learned how to use it. The kingdom was becoming stronger. Its administration was becoming more sophisticated, and its builders were about to attempt something extraordinary. At Saqqara, during the reign of King Djoser, the landscape began to change. A vast funerary complex was constructed. At its center stood the Step Pyramid. It was unlike the earlier royal tombs. Instead of remaining low against the landscape, it rose upward in a series of massive levels. The monument is traditionally associated with Imhotep, a high official whose name would survive for thousands of years. But the most important story may be what the monument tells us about Egyptian society. Imagine the organization required. Stone had to be quarried. Workers had to transport it. Craftsmen had to shape it. Food had to reach the workforce. Tools had to be produced. Plans had to be coordinated. Materials had to arrive at the right time. This was not the work of a single person. It required an organized state. The Step Pyramid demonstrated that Egypt had reached a new level of political and technical capability. But it was only the beginning. Egyptian builders continued experimenting, and the pyramid itself continued to evolve. Under King Sneferu, Egyptian builders attempted some of the largest pyramid projects yet seen. And one of those projects became famous for its unusual appearance: the bent pyramid. Its sides change angle as they rise. The reason for that change has been debated, but the monument clearly demonstrates the challenges involved in constructing enormous stone structures. Then came another major achievement: the Red Pyramid. Its smooth-sided form represented an important development in Egyptian pyramid architecture. The builders had learned. They had experimented. They had solved problems. And they had improved upon earlier designs. This is one of the most fascinating things about ancient engineering. Great achievements rarely appear from nowhere. They are built upon previous attempts. One generation discovers something. The next generation improves it. And eventually, a new level becomes possible. That moment arrived during the 4th dynasty. At Giza, 3 pyramids, 3 rulers. One landscape that would become one of the most recognizable places on Earth. Khufu, Khafre, Menkaure. And among them, the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Its scale is difficult to comprehend. Massive quantities of stone, huge amounts of labor, complex planning, transportation, food supplies, craftsmanship, administration. The pyramid was not simply a pile of enormous stones. It was the result of an entire system working together. And that may be the greatest mystery of all. Not who built it, but how did they organize everything required to build it? The answer lies in the society surrounding the pyramid. A centralized state, a productive agricultural economy, skilled craftsmen, workers, administrators, and generations of accumulated knowledge. The Great Pyramid was therefore more than a royal monument. It was a demonstration of what the Egyptian state could organize. The desert had become a massive construction site. And when the work was finished, one of the greatest monuments in human history stood before the world. But the pyramid tells only half the story. Because behind the stone were people. History often remembers rulers. Their names survive. Their monuments survive. Their titles survive. But civilizations are not built by rulers alone. Farmers produced food. Craftsmen shaped materials. Boatmen moved goods. Scribes recorded information. Administrators organized resources. Workers carried out enormous projects. Families maintained communities. Generation after generation, ordinary people sustained the kingdom. Many of their names disappeared. Their personal stories were never written down. Yet their work remains visible. Every field that produced food, every tool, every boat, every stone, was part of a much larger human system. That is why the pyramids should not only make us think about kings. They should make us think about people. People who lived thousands of years ago, but faced many of the same basic challenges that humans face today. They needed food. They needed shelter. They needed cooperation. They needed organization. And they built a society that lasted for generations. Ancient Egypt was far more than its monuments. It developed systems of writing, art, architecture, administration, agriculture, trade, craftsmanship, and a complex social structure. Its surviving monuments and records allow us to reconstruct pieces of a world that existed thousands of years ago. The ancient Egyptians also had their own religious traditions concerning death, burial, kingship, and the unseen world. These were beliefs belonging to the ancient civilization. We can study them historically through inscriptions, tombs, monuments, and archaeological discoveries without treating those beliefs as truth. And this distinction matters. Studying a civilization does not require accepting everything that civilization believed. History asks us to understand the evidence. What did people believe? How did those beliefs influence their society? What did they build? What did they leave behind? And what can the evidence actually tell us? The answers help us understand Egypt without turning uncertainty into fact. But no kingdom remains unchanged forever. Eventually, the political structure of the old kingdom weakened. Central authority became less effective. Regional leaders gained greater influence. Economic and environmental pressures may also have contributed. Historians continue to debate the exact causes. But eventually, the centralized order broke down. Egypt entered what historians call the First Intermediate Period. The Great Age of pyramid building had come to an end. But Egypt had not disappeared. The Nile still flowed. The people remained. The traditions and knowledge of the civilization survived. And eventually, Egypt would reunite. New rulers would rise. New kingdoms would emerge. And the story would continue. The end of the Old Kingdom was not the end of ancient Egypt. It was only the end of its first great chapter. Today, the Nile still flows through Egypt. The desert still surrounds it. And the pyramids still rise above the horizon. But imagine the landscape thousands of years ago. Farmers working beside the river. Boats carrying supplies. Craftsmen shaping stone. Scribes recording information. Workers building monuments. And rulers attempting to hold together a kingdom that stretched along the Nile. Those people could never have known what their civilization would become. They could not have known that thousands of years later, people from around the world would still travel to see what they built. Their kings are gone. Their political systems disappeared. Their cities changed. But the evidence remains. A river. A civilization. A collection of monuments. And a story that survived the people who created it. That is perhaps the greatest lesson of ancient Egypt. Great civilizations are not created in a single moment. They are built slowly, through knowledge, through organization, through cooperation, through generations of human effort. Egypt began with communities beside a river. Those communities became a kingdom. That kingdom developed systems of government, agriculture, writing, trade, and construction. And eventually, it produced monuments that would outlive almost everything around them. The pyramids are silent, but they still speak. They tell us that thousands of years ago, human beings were already capable of extraordinary organization and determination. And when we look at the pyramids today, we should remember that behind every stone, there was human effort. Behind every monument, there was a society. And behind the rise of that society was the Nile, a river flowing through the desert, that became the foundation of one of the greatest civilizations of the ancient world. The kings have vanished. The builders are gone. The world they knew has changed beyond recognition. But the river still flows. And the pyramids still stand.